Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
So you've got way more people, way more trains. You know, it's particles in a jar. Something's going to hit sooner or later.
A train derailment in Delta has some people living near the tracks again asking for them to be moved. Plus,
this is an NDP police service.
Surrey's mayor announces a constitutional challenge over switching police forces. Will it work? And punishing water wasters. We'll tell you how much local cities fined people who defied watering restrictions during our unprecedented drought.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. A derailed train is still clogging up the tracks in Metro Vancouver. The railway company says no hazardous materials was spilled, but people who live along that corridor say it is another wake-up call. And as John Hernandez reports, it's reignited calls to move the tracks.
A BNSF railway train went down on Sunday in Delta near Highway 1. The company confirmed it spilled some fuel. By Monday afternoon, crews were still working to clear the tracks with the hopes of having them back online by Tuesday morning.
That could have probably happened anywhere, right? So, and anywhere being along the bay or next to the homes.
Eric Seitz lives along the same train tracks which run through Crescent Beach and White Rock. He's counted a dozen BNSF trains that have broken down in the area since 2014, blocking community roads. He wonders what might happen if a similar derailment happened here.
It could have an, terrible impact on the bay.
Seitz has been involved in past campaigns calling for this rail line to be relocated, saying it's outdated while also running through densely populated areas.
You've got way more people, way more trains. It's particles in a jar. Something's going to hit sooner or later.
They are very vulnerable, and the area is prone to landslides.
This transportation consultant says many of the trains that run through the area carry chlorine and other hazardous chemicals. She says proposed rail realignments could actually make the route shorter and move it away from densely populated areas.
Do you really want that going through the community when there is an alternative that is cost effective in light of the disaster that could happen?
Despite years of campaigning, both BC and Ottawa have shown little interest. Advocates say the window to act is closing.
You need to start putting that on the horizon, and now would be a good time before, say you build casinos and housing and whatever along those few remaining places that would allow for a much more larger and efficient trail route to exist.
For now, residents call this latest derailment a wake-up call as this campaign looks to get back on track. John Hernandez, CBC News, White Rock.
The city of Surrey has now stepped up its legal fight against the provincial government over policing. The mayor says they are expanding the Supreme Court challenge to stop the transition to a municipal force. But as Justin McElroy reports, Surrey's argument might be less about the law and more about politics.
Is the 5-year-long controversy over who will police Surrey going away anytime soon? No.
My team and I have been clear. We oppose this transition and will do everything within reason to stop it.
That is Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke announcing the city will continue its legal fight against the province to try and keep the RCMP. And she framed it as a matter of city rights.
This government does not have the right to run roughshod on every local government that doesn't bend to their will.
Except they sort of do. Here is a constitution. It's been very clear on this in Canada and always has been. Provinces are in charge of municipalities, which functionally means so long as they don't contradict their own laws or break federal laws, provinces can do almost whatever they want. It's why political scientists who aren't affiliated with either side of this dispute generally have a dim view of Locke's challenge.
From a political perspective, they should expect not very much from the court.
The effort to try and argue against provincial sovereignty over municipal institutions is a really challenging one to make.
But maybe the argument Locke is making isn't constitutional. Maybe it's focused on something else, especially when you consider her comments today.
Stop the NDP police service. This is an NDP police service. This is an NDP tax on Surrey.
Which may end up being good political arguments, but whether it's a strong enough legal one is another question. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
The provincial government has now tabled legislation for ride-hailing and food delivery drivers, which we told you about last week. If passed, the bill would see gig workers treated as employees under the Employment Standards Act and Workers' Compensation Act. The government says workers ought to make $20 an hour, a wage 20% higher than minimum. BC also wants to make gig workers eligible for workers' compensation and stop companies from withholding tips.
We as province are establishing basic minimum standards for these workers, and we will have them implemented, and we will monitor them going forward next 6 months, a year, to see if it has the desired impact, to make sure that the basic minimum standards are enjoyed by these workers.
It's not yet clear when the bill may become law. A Victoria City councillor is facing anger from provincial politicians after apparently signing her name to a letter calling on federal MPs to resign due to the war between Hamas and Israel. While there have been several calls for a ceasefire by some BC politicians, this letter questioned the validity of reports of sexual violence committed by Hamas, calling out federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh for repeating, quote, unverified accusations. BC United has called for councillor Susan Kim to resign. And for its part, the NDP government says she ought to apologize.
I believe in survivors. I believe in their first-hand accounts, and it is absolutely wrong to deny that these accounts happen. In this situation, I believe it is important for Councillor Kim to come forward and provide some comments and, of course, apologize immediately.
The letter is no longer available to view online, but CBC News accessed it using an internet archive tool. Councillor Kim is yet to comment on if and why she signed the letter. She has closed her social media accounts, and CBC News has not been able to reach her for comment. School liaison officers may soon be coming to Vancouver elementary schools. Parents received a letter last week which says police officers may be invited to participate in school events, give presentations, or ensure school safety. The letter notes officers will be wearing more casual uniforms, driving unmarked vehicles, and have less visible guns. The letter says parents can opt their children out of the program, but some are worried about what that might mean.
Got various parents that think it should be an opt-in situation.
Right.
So instead of putting the onus on parents to opt out and the consequential effect on children, like if there are a small group of opt-out children, and, you know, one of the things that was foreshadowed in the letter was visiting school events.
Right.
Are those children excluded then from the school event?
Maloney says parents are waiting to hear more, such as how often officers will be on school grounds, the content that will be taught, and the ramifications of opting their children out. Perhaps you saw it in the water yesterday. A barge broke loose from its mooring buoy in English Bay, sparking some déjà vu, to say the least. Almost 2 years ago to the day, another barge got stuck along the seawall near Sunset Beach, prompting the park board to install the cheeky barge chilling beach sign. This time, though, this is yesterday, a crew from the Canadian Coast Guard arrived just in time to stop it from running aground on Sunset Beach. A commercial tug had to be called in to bring it back to a secure mooring in Vancouver Harbour. Ralmax, the company that owns that barge, says it's looking into what happened. Canada's housing crisis is a huge worry for many people, a fact not lost on the federal government. And as Karina Roman reports, the problem is expected to be a key focus in tomorrow's fiscal update.
Amid Canada's worsening housing and affordability crisis and growing criticism it's not doing enough to solve it, CBC News has learned Ottawa will commit billions to bringing relief in Tuesday's fall fiscal economic statement.
We are here for Canadians.
A senior government source not authorized to speak publicly says among the big promises tomorrow, expect $15 billion in loans to build new rental housing units, a $1 billion fund to build affordable housing, and new tax rules meant to curb short-term rentals in favor of long-term tenants.
My sense is if there's tens of thousands of units that we can turn into not a competitor for a hotel or for a few nights, but a home for a family and a community, it's incumbent upon us to do everything we can to use the properties that are available for homes.
Even before the announcement, the opposition argues the Prime Minister can't deliver.
He will come out here and he will make billions of dollars of housing promises, just like he did 8 years ago. And what will that do? It'll build bureaucracy.
For its part, the NDP wants more money for social housing and tougher competition laws for the grocery sector.
So are these initiatives that we're going to see in the fall economic statement, or are Canadians going to be left waiting again?
Critics, worried about the deficit, say now is not the time for new spending, but to protect existing social programs and services.
I just think, again, the more imprudent you are, the more difficult you put yourself in a situation where you're going to have to cut programs or raise taxes at one point. It's just pure math.
But with high interest rates, slow growth, and constant pressure to spend more from the NDP, whose support the Liberals rely on, the chances of a government plan to balance the books are slim. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
The United Nations has issued another sobering warning. A new report says even if countries keep their current emission pledges, the Earth is on track to warm nearly 3 degrees above pre-industrial levels by the end of this century. This comes ahead of next week's UN Climate Change Conference. Renee Filipponi now with the urgent calls for action and why there's still hope.
The report shows that the emissions gap is more like an emissions canyon.
A warning from the UN Secretary General in the lead up to COP28, the International Climate Summit in Dubai.
We must reverse course. And as we have seen in this report, the crucial aspect is the addiction to fossil fuels.
The annual emissions gap report says if more action isn't taken to lower emissions, the world could blow past the 1.5-degree warming target agreed to in Paris in 2015.
What we need to see at the COP is a massive, expedited move forward on decarbonization.
This year saw record-breaking temperatures, with 2023 on track to be the hottest year ever recorded for the planet. In Canada, destructive wildfires led to mass evacuations, as other parts of the country managed serious drought.
This is with the world being at about 1.2 degrees of warming. Imagine what it's going to be like with 2.5 degrees of warming, right?
However, this climate expert says there is room for optimism.
10 years ago, the world scientists would have told you we were on pace for 4 degrees or more of warming. The current report says our current policies can hopefully get us to 3 degrees of warming.
But the federal government is getting pushback on some of its key measures to fight climate change, including the carbon tax and net zero plans.
And I think we're getting there slowly when you see the progress that has been made. But we could do so much more if we work together.
Representatives from nearly 200 countries will be arriving in Dubai later this month. A moment for leaders to take stock of what they have achieved and how they will address the major challenges ahead in the fight against climate change. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
It is fall, and as more rain falls across the south coast, watering restrictions in Metro Vancouver have eased. But then when the rules were in place, how did cities and towns tackle water wasters? Our Chad Pawson has a close look at the numbers and how different municipalities treated those breaking the rules.
This past summer in BC saw unprecedented drought. Along with asking residents to conserve water, municipalities also enforced watering restrictions with warnings and fines. And now we have a sense of just how many were issued. Bylaw officers in Metro Vancouver issued a total of $166,000 in fines for water restriction violations over just a 10-week period from August to mid-October. Now, the amounts of the fines range from $100 to $500 each. Vancouver handed out the most. Vancouver handed out 168 fines worth $500 each. Those were reduced to $250 if the property owner paid within 2 weeks. Coquitlam was second. It handed out 154 fines worth $250, while North Vancouver was third with 109 fines worth $200. Now, some smaller Metro Vancouver municipalities did not issue any fines, saying they lacked the resources to actually enforce the restrictions. When it comes to warnings, bylaw officers handed out more than 1,000 of those. Some cities like Burnaby actually chose education over fines. They handed out about 300 warnings and saying that an escalation was rarely needed, such as a fine, to have property owners change their water use habits. The penalties and the warnings illustrate the extent cities went to have residents conserve water during a period of unprecedented drought in the region, as well as the hundreds of property owners who actually defied the request to help mitigate the crisis. Even though BC's South Coast is seen as water-rich, local, regional, and provincial officials want people to rethink their water use habits as increasingly dry summers and wildfires stretch supply. On average, each person in Metro Vancouver uses around 400 liters of water per day. That's per person. Academics argue fines over water use are not worth the effort. A better system, they say, is to install water meters for every property in the region and charge residents bulk rates for the amount of water they use. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
To water of a different kind, our science and climate specialist Darius Madavi has our first look at the weather and some warnings for us.
Yes, that's right. So we do have a pretty severe wind warning in place. Now, these winds have been gusting quite high all day, and that is going to continue into this evening with winds gusting close to 100 kilometers per hour. Consistently above 100, close to 100 kilometers per hour, and gusting well above that. So that is the wind warning. That should come down tonight, but this one going to be in place until tomorrow morning. Snowfall warning, we have a low pressure system that's quite intense just off the coast in the Pacific, and that is pushing this front that is going to keep bringing snowfall until tomorrow morning up here. Then tomorrow that front detaches from the system and starts to move down the coast, meaning that we will be getting some rain here in Vancouver tomorrow. That's really, there we go. That's really going to be the main story because we have this system that will be running down the coast. You can see that snowfall moving in right now. By tomorrow morning, early, just overnight actually, we're going to see that rain come to the Central Coast and the North Island. As it continues rolling down, it hits Tofino early in the morning, or not early in the morning, mid-morning, and then continues rolling down, reaching us here on the Lower Mainland by the mid-afternoon, and then going to continue until just the early evening before it levels off again. So really not too much rain at all, just a few hours of it, pretty much across the South Coast as that system rolls through. But do expect that there will be some moisture, and then clearing up through the rest of this week. We've got sunny skies until the end, and we get those that cloud really clears out. Now here in Vancouver, we do see that cloud start to build in tomorrow before it does leave again tomorrow evening.
Okay, thanks very much, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
A strike at the Rogers Sugar Refinery here in Vancouver is taking some of the sweetness out of the holiday season. Job action at one of the country's few sugar processing facilities is now stretching into a 7th week. And as Janella Hamilton tells us, some small businesses are feeling a bitter strain.
Pastry chef Tanya Muller owns Legato Bake Shop in Vancouver. She says she's already struggling to find the sugar she needs to fulfill orders ahead of the busy holiday season.
We started getting shorted drastically on our sugar, and we've been trying to just basically search over town, just going to Costco and things early in the morning, trying to find sugar wherever we can.
Muller estimates she needs at least 8 to 10 big bags of white and brown sugar each week. But due to the strike, her wholesaler is now only able to supply 2 bags, and they're more expensive.
We're seeing a 15% increase on those bags of sugar, which is at a time where food costs are already at like an all-time high.
She worries she may have to cut back production, and she's not the only one. The strike is dragging into the busiest time of the year when bakeries and sweet shops bring in a majority of their yearly revenue.
If they're not able to produce the volume that they expected to, it is going to impact them, and we may see a few small bakeries have to close.
I personally have a CBC loan that's coming due in January that I have to pay back, so I was hoping on, Christmas, relying on additional income.
Another hurdle small business owners are having to jump over after a big profit setback triggered by the pandemic.
Here we have like our yellow sugar, which has been by far like the hardest for me to get.
The strike's impact is being felt across Western Canada.
We were in Ottawa last week, and we let the ministers know what was going on, and we'll make sure that our bakers get the support that they need.
The union representing the 138 striking refinery workers says it is at odds with Rogers Sugar over issues like wages, benefits, and the company's proposal to ramp up operations to run 24/7.
It's that work-life balance and, having
people work these long hours and spending more time at work than you are with your family.
Roger Sugar says the Vancouver refinery has continued to operate at a reduced level, but acknowledges an impact on supply. Each day the labor dispute drags on is another day of uncertainty. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Late night snacking. Do you do it? Come on, admit it. We're going to speak with a doctor about why eating before bed can mess with your sleep and what can help. Right after this. And hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Thanks for being here. Tiny homes have been popping up at homeless encampments in Prince George. With winter weather setting in there, volunteer builders say there is no time to waste. But as Kate Partridge reports, they're facing roadblocks.
Volunteers are working in snow and gusting winds to finish up shelters for residents of Prince George's Moccasin Flats encampment. Brad Gustafson is a volunteer and a contractor by trade. He's designed the shelters, tall enough to stand in and small enough to heat.
They're 8 feet wide by 8 feet deep, or 8 feet long, with a slight slope to it, and with a tin roof. And they just are big enough for 2 people to have a bed in.
Mayor Simon Yu campaigned on building emergency shelters for the unhoused. He told CBC News it's been harder than he thought.
The problem on the street, that for the scale of it, we have not facing that as a society together for a long time.
And then last week, the city of Prince George issued notices saying building and occupying these structures is illegal. Nikita Tiji has spent winters in a tent before. This year, she's in one of these tiny homes with her partner.
It's better. It's a lot better than a tent, for sure. People are gonna freeze out here, man. Like, they should be getting us lumber and stuff.
The city told CBC News there are no plans to enforce the orders, and volunteers say they aren't stopping. Gustafson says there is still a wait list of about 60 people hoping for shelter this winter. Kate Partridge, CBC News, Prince George.
We all know getting a good night's sleep is pivotal, to say the least. Many things depend on our ability to rest and impact it, including what we eat and when. Here to tell us why late night snacking can be not so great for your health and sleep is Vancouver family doctor Melissa Lem. Doctor, thanks for being here.
Great to be back.
So, between you and I, do you have a late night snack guilty pleasure?
Sometimes I do stay up late, even though I try to practice what I preach and get good sleep. But when I stay up late, I usually start with something that's well-intentioned, like a cup of herbal tea, but then it devolves into whatever I can find. I become an opportunistic feeder, like handfuls of cereal, chocolate chips, peanut butter, whatever's easy and accessible is what I tend to eat.
Yeah, and I will fully admit that given working late nights, you come home, a little cracker and cheese on occasion, and maybe some candy as well. So how does poor nutrition while we're awake impact us when we're just about to go to bed as well?
Well, if you think about what you eat during the day, certainly those effects can carry over into when you're sleeping. And one big culprit, as we all know, is caffeine. It's a central nervous system stimulant, so when you drink it before bedtime, it does exactly the opposite thing that you want to be doing. In general, it's recommended that you don't drink any caffeine before 6 hours before bedtime, and longer if you're especially sensitive. And then alcohol is another one that's less intuitive because sometimes it can help you fall asleep, but unfortunately its central nervous system depressant effect wears off in the middle of the night, meaning the second half of the night gets a lot more fitful. And then last but not least, fatty foods and spicy foods. This can both sit in your stomach, causing indigestion overnight, and also increase heartburn, which we know is a recipe for bad sleep.
But they're so good. So we know what we're not supposed to eat before bed, and you've made those recommendations. What are some of the foods we ought to indulge in before so we sleep better?
A general category of food is, in fact, complex carbohydrates, like a bowl of oatmeal, or you said you eat crackers and cheese, so whole grain crackers or toast, because that releases serotonin in our brains that relaxes us and also helps us fall asleep. And also the fiber in the complex carbs keeps your sugar levels constant overnight, so you don't get a crash that causes sleep problems. But the best evidence is actually for a general overall healthy diet, like the Mediterranean diet, rich in vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and lean protein, because that overall promotes more restorative sleep and less insomnia.
So, and when we talk about, we often think of our health in 3 or 4 ways, diet, sleep, and exercise. How are all of those interconnected?
These can all become a vicious cycle or a positive cycle. So for example, if you eat unhealthily, this causes worse sleep, which can change the way your brain processes and in fact make you want to crave more junk food and more food in general. And then you're tired, you don't want to exercise, so this becomes a bad issue. But if you eat healthily, then you sleep better. You've got more energy and motivation to exercise. We know that diet, exercise, and sleep are foundations of a healthy lifestyle, so we really need to be prioritizing all 3 of them.
Dr. Melissa Lim, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Good suggestions for a late night snack.
Thanks, Dan.
A group of MPs, both Conservative and Liberal, are in Israel. Why they're there and what they're hearing after this.
The blueberry harvest is over, but Peter Swinkles is still hard at work mowing his fields. He's been in the business for over 40 years, but it's only been in the past few that he's regularly lost crops to extreme weather. There are also new weeds, insects, and fungi to contend with.
Climate change is a reality, and it's thrown a big wrench into the challenges of producing a wild blueberry crop.
Those challenges are too much for any one grower to solve alone. That's where scientists come in. Nova Scotia is home to a wild blueberry research centre. David Percival is the lead researcher. He says climate change is proving to be a double-edged sword for blueberries.
There's some good ones right there. Just a little bit of an increase in temperature, so 1 to 2 degrees increase, has resulted in our growing season becoming substantially longer. On the negative side, unfortunately, we've had some pest issues surface that have become really, really challenging.
Percival is working with microorganisms that can be used as an alternative to chemical sprays for these new pests. He's also helping farmers use drones to get highly detailed information about their fields.
As you can see behind us, you have these various shades, and each of these units is what we refer to as a clone. So it's quite a diverse population. And so we're mapping that with the use of the drones, getting an idea of what's located where, and in particular, along with that, what's susceptible, what needs a little bit extra care.
Percival's research center may be small, but growers say it has a big impact.
The big advantage that we have from research is they've given me extra tools in my toolbox to be able to propagate this type of crop.
With new tools for a new climate reality, local blueberries have a chance to continue growing. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Burritt.
Fighting in the Israel-Hamas war has now moved to the doorstep of another hospital in northern Gaza. But as Sasha Petrusik reports, a group of at-risk babies from another hospital are now safely in Egypt.
28 premature babies were lifted out of Gaza today, out of danger, into Egypt, suffering from infections after a week-long siege of Al-Shifa Hospital by Israeli forces.
They all are, again, seriously ill. They have a long road to go.
Among the babies, Lobna Al-Sykes' daughter. Enough, she says. Stop targeting innocent children. It was one bright spot in a conflict that's had too few of them. Again today, Hamas rockets were intercepted over Tel Aviv. Increased fighting with the militant group Hezbollah along the Lebanese border in the north. And Israeli strikes continued in Gaza. Here, 14 Palestinians reportedly killed in the south. Here, hospital staff say at least 12 died when Israeli tanks moved in and fired at the Indonesian hospital. Israel says it was responding to shooting from inside. Hospital staff deny any. In all, Palestinian health officials say more than 13,000 have died in Gaza.
We are witnessing a killing of civilians that is unparalleled and unprecedented in any conflict since I am Secretary General.
Death, but also suffering on both sides. The families of more than 200 kidnapped Israelis holding on to hope that negotiations to release at least some of them are going well.
I think we should be hopeful, and I think this is the only way that we can get up in the morning and start our day. Our lives just stopped October 7th.
A similar feeling in Gaza, where in the south today, those fleeing the bombs, already facing shortages of food, medical help, and housing, now face wind and rain. A stormy season without end. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
A group of Canadian MPs, meanwhile, visited a kibbutz north of Tel Aviv today to express their solidarity with Israelis.
It was really moving. It really made it very personal. It made me understand what it was like to live in a safe room, wondering if you were going to be alive for the very next minute or if your loved ones were going to be killed from moment to moment for over 24 hours. It explains a lot about the Israeli perception, why the entire political class in Israel, from the left to the right, all believes they need to get rid of Hamas.
The 2 Liberal and 3 Conservative MPs are part of a larger Canadian delegation to Israel. They listened to accounts from survivors of the October 7th Hamas attack and visited a cemetery where some of the victims are buried. Turning to Russia's invasion of Ukraine now, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was in Kyiv today for an unannounced visit. As Richard Madden reports, it came amid Ukrainian concern that the conflict is being overshadowed by the Israel-Hamas war.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin arrived in Kyiv after a long 9-hour train ride from Poland to deliver what he called America's unwavering support for Ukraine in its war against Russia. His high-profile, unannounced visit comes as Ukrainian officials are reportedly concerned their conflict is being overshadowed by Israel's war against Hamas, stretching badly needed resources to help in their fight. Austin delivered a message of reassurance, promising $100 million worth of new weapons and security assistance. Later, he delivered a message to Americans back home why it's critical for the U.S. to stay in the fight.
What happens here matters, not just to Ukraine, but to the entire world. This is about the rules-based international order. This is about, not living in a world where a dictator can wake up one day and decide to annex the property of his peaceful neighbor.
Most Western allies, including Canada, have supplied weapons, training, and support to Ukraine, but nearly 2 years into the war, cracks are starting to show. Some European countries like Poland have scaled back their support, citing their own needs to defend themselves. Ukrainian officials are concerned about war fatigue setting in from its traditional allies and are relying on U.S. leadership.
It's very important for us that the United States, together with us, we count on your support. Thanks to Congress, bipartisan support, and we are very thankful to American people there with us all these difficult days.
But domestic headwinds in the U.S. is complicating support. Congress rejected new cash for Ukraine in its latest spending bill, and a growing number of Republicans say they won't approve any more new aid to Ukraine unless there's more funding to secure America's southern border. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
A gathering on Granville Island to celebrate a passion, skateboarding. We check out the ollies and the rails after this.
Hey there, welcome to my home.
All right, what am I looking at here?
Well, this is where I spend most of my time. I live in this RV here in Eastern Canada, and I'm just getting it ready for the winter. The day my housing situation changed, I came out and stayed in the RV, and I've been in it ever since. The weather was coming, and I knew that this was going to be not an overnight thing, that I was probably going to be in it a few months, so as soon as I started to get cold, I started insulating it. So I took all the clothes out and then I lined it with styrofoam for the draft wouldn't come out. I did the drawers as well. I've been posting the videos on TikTok and on Facebook as well. I get views from many different countries, and people from all over the world watch my page. So that's the temperature in the living room part. We'll go see what's like in the bedroom. The advice that I get online is amazing, right? Yeah, people, have that have already experienced this have a little knowledge that I don't have, right? So it's definitely great to collaborate with other people that have been in this situation, right? Now that I have a blanket, I kind of just like to keep the breeze from the windows, because it does produce a lot of draft. So I have that blanket there to prevent the draft from coming in. People have negative ideas on what leads people to living in a situation like this. I think that they think that if people are living in this kind of situation, it must be due to some fault of their own, and that's not the case. And they also assume that people who, are living in these kind of situations don't work, and that's not the case either. I've been gainfully employed for the last decade taking care of other people's loved ones, so that's not true at all. So I have these curtains with lined backs, and I'm going to put those on the draft spots. And I also have these different packs of command strips I'm going to hang them up with. So I'm just going to start doing that, and I'll bring you back. People reach out and say, that this is something that they're going to have to do in the future as well because of the housing crisis currently going on in Nova Scotia, right? That one heater is heating the whole space. Hopefully the heat stays. Hopefully that heater and the propane heats it for the winter. And if not, there's some blankets, there's some sweaters, there's other ways to stay warm. Yeah, but I'm hoping I can keep the whole thing warm. That's the hope.
Have a great day, and thanks for stopping by.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Let's make the season kind with CBC's annual Food Bank Day coming up on December 1st. Kick off the holiday season and join us for a special day of programming, all in support of local food banks across BC. This year, for the first time ever, you can watch our live stream of the entire day on CBC Gem and at cbc.ca/foodbankday. We'll see you December 1st. Local skateboarders met on Granville Island this past weekend to celebrate their love of the sport and for a chance to show off their skills. Our Sarab Sandhu dropped in.
The ramps are set and the boards are ready. This is the 5th annual All Aboard Skateboard celebration, open for skateboarders of all ages and skill level. The 2-day event was organized by Vancouver Skateboard Coalition with help of Granville Island, which has been providing space for annual skateboarding events.
Usually on a day like today, all of these kids, there would be nowhere for them to do this thing that we all love. So the Vancouver Skateboard Coalition's goal is to try to provide spaces and opportunities for people of all ages that have a love for skateboarding.
Besides the open skateboarding sessions, training is also available for those who are keen to take up the sport, especially younger ones eager to land a trick or two.
The first time I went down this ramp, I started pumping and then I got really good at pumping like I am now. The first time I dropped in I was scared, but I tried it, but it was fun for me. I like the community part. Like if you need help, there'll probably be someone that knows how to do the trick and they'll help you with it.
Organizers say they are encouraged by the response they received, but the city still lacks spaces needed to develop the sport.
And we need safe space to do it because unfortunately, a lot of members of our community, are using parkades in the middle of the night because that's all we have. And unfortunately, those aren't always the safest spaces.
Cole says the coalition has been working with the City of Vancouver and Parks Board, but needs more funding to provide indoor spaces for the skateboarding community. For the time being, a pop-up ramp will remain in place on Granville Island till the end of January. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
We know BC is big bear country. Now a video has surfaced of a group of people doing exactly what they should not do when encountering the wild animal in Campbell River. The video was taken this summer, but only recently came to light. Have a look. There's the bear, enjoying a meal near the water, while members of the group crouch down beside it, within clawing distance, to take photos. Although the animal appears indifferent, experts warn that could change suddenly.
The action that we would suggest people take there is to back away from that space and, just give that bear space and time to finish its meal.
Not only did the group not leave the bear alone, one person even tries to, yep, there you go, touch it, before somebody on the bridge yelled at him to leave it alone. BC Conservation says it doesn't appear the people fed the bear, which would have been an offense. but they know they're very lucky to escape unhurt. Darius Madavi, remember that time you went up and just petted a bear in the woods?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Good.
Actually, Dan. No, I don't think that happened.
No,
no. They do look
do it.
very cute, but I'm not going to go up to
They're
them.
lovely.
Yeah.
Stay away.
Yes. I'm shocked that, I understand why feeding a bear is an offense, but I feel like approaching it is just almost as bad.
Well,
So,
for you, sure. Yeah. If you feed the bear, it might get habituated, rely on the food, and then they have to kill it.
Yes, yeah, but you interacting with the bear is the same, so we should really, let's just avoid the bears altogether.
There you go.
right?
From a distance.
Yes, exactly.
There you go. What do we got on the weather front?
Yes, we will talk about the weather. First, I do want to highlight a big milestone that we hit this weekend. Not a good one. According to Copernicus, the EU's climate change service, we do seem to have passed 2 degrees Celsius in warming 2 days in a row, actually, Friday and Saturday this week. This is the first time that a day, the global temperature around the world has passed 2 degrees Celsius of warming. And you can see here that trend line. Look at all these days where we've smashed records for how anomalous the temperatures have been. This seems like it was just waiting to happen, really, and considering El Nino is still getting going, this is not going to be the last time we see this, I would expect, over the next year. Now, I do also want to show you a new toy that I have. This is called the Climate Shift Index. It's from a group called Climate Central. They do attribution analysis, so they take a look at what the temperatures currently are, and then they take a look at what that would look like if it wasn't for climate change. And so right now, temperatures in Brazil are probably the most anomalous. Africa is also looking not great, but 5 times or more likely to have these temperatures because of climate change. Brazil has had a ridiculous heat wave of over 40 degrees Celsius for a long time now. So it's shocking to see, but it's another sort of map that we'll be keeping an eye on in the days ahead now that we have it. Now, in terms of temperatures here in BC, we are looking at temperatures coming down a little bit, especially in the southern interior as this cold front does move down. But again, the big story is the wind. Because of that wind warning, you can see gusting over 100 kilometers per hour right now expected on the north coast and for Haida Gwaii. But if we look at precipitation, that's the other big story. You see all that snow coming into the north over the next 24 hours, especially overnight tonight. That's when most of it comes. And then you'll see that rain coming down the coast. So definitely going to be one to watch out for over the next day or so. You can see in our conditions roundup, we have that rain precipitation coming down the coast, a little bit drier in the interior, but a change that front pushes in tomorrow as we see, sorry, not tomorrow, on Wednesday, the remnants of that front moving into the interior. But here in Vancouver, it is just those afternoon and evening showers tomorrow, about 4 hours of rain, and then we clear up for the rest of the week.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
In the Maritimes, where some people are not happy about a green energy plan of giant proportions, some say Nova Scotia needs a big money project like this, but others don't want to endanger the ancient trade that sustained it for generations. Tom Murphy explains.
The race to get green is on. Dirty coal, fossil fuels are on the way out. By 2030, 80% of Nova Scotia's energy must come from renewable resources. It's a big ask. But ready to swoop in is Nova East Wind, an international joint venture. It wants to build massive offshore floating wind turbines, a Canadian first, giving the province a chance to maybe become a green energy powerhouse. For generations, Nova Scotians have looked to the sea for solutions. This time, there are headwinds.
What's going on, buddy? You got a faller? Yeah.
This is Canso in northeastern Nova Scotia, where Billy Bond and many before him have fished for more than 4 centuries.
He does. He's a nice looking fish.
Lobster, halibut, shrimp, snow crab, and yes, on this day, bluefin tuna.
Beautiful fish, man. That's the most beautiful thing that swims in the ocean.
Those huge wind turbines, the plan is to put about 25 of them, at least to start, in about 150 square kilometers of ocean where these men fish. So, for comparison, here's the Eiffel Tower, about 300 meters tall. The blades on the turbines, they'd be longer than football fields. And the whole structure actually floats while being anchored to the ocean floor. It would be a roughly $2 billion mega project. Now, Canso has seen other big industries promise big things for this region over the years, only to have them fade away.
There's nothing else here except for the fishery.
Back in port, Bond says this time he fears for his livelihood.
But I'll tell you, down here in this neck of the woods, they sure like trying to put us out of business.
So you got a lot of questions.
A lot of questions and no answers. Yes, you know why? Because it was the fishermen were the last ones to even find out about it.
So what worries you the most about the offshore wind turbines?
The fishing. The fishing grounds.
Some people will say it's a big ocean out there.
We got to go where the best fish is. Sure, there's lots of bottom out there. It's a big ocean. But it's not everywhere there's fish.
And this area here is the area that has been surveyed.
So they organize. Ginny Boudreau is executive director of the local fishing association. She's fighting for the whole process to be slowed.
Because 5 years ago, if I had put my finger as a fisherman, as a harvester, on the map as to where I'm fishing a particular species, or where I was fishing 5 years ago, my finger can't go on that spot today because I am over here or I'm over there. The ocean is warming. Fish species are moving. There should be a lot more research. There should be a lot more consultation. And I think that in order for that to happen, we need a set of regulations.
Are you surprised by how quickly this thing is picking up speed?
Oh, it's unbelievable.
We're working on the regulations, governments say. In the meantime, they push on, holding public information sessions like this one across the province.
I understand their concerns. I grew up in Geisper County.
Jerry Sheehan of Nova East Wind, himself the son of a fishing family near Canso, encourages the government to move faster, even if there are still some questions.
With respect to how much access they'll lose, today that's not known. And the reason it's not known is the regulations are being developed as far as what fishing activity could happen within a wind farm, for example. We're actually supportive of that. As long as the activity can happen safe and it won't harm the infrastructure, we don't want to do anything that's going to impact their livelihoods.
And Sheehan argues an offshore wind project of this scale could even spawn a whole new parallel industry here by capitalizing on the wind resource.
We've got one of the best wind regimes in the entire world. You're able to get a lot more power, in some cases 5 times more power out of one single unit compared to an onshore turbine. The thing that we really want to have is the first project. We believe that the first project will kickstart the industry, so I'm very confident that we can build offshore turbines here.
But of late, some offshore wind projects are having a hard time staying afloat. High interest rates and supply chain problems are driving up costs, killing projects.
Especially in the last couple of years.
Chris Nizraki of the University of Maine says the floating offshore wind industry is having growing pains.
And so some of the developers are actually backing out of agreements because they're not cost effective. Some of these companies are walking away because the costs have escalated and they're trying to renegotiate those prices. So for offshore wind, it's more expensive than land-based wind, that's for sure. The benefit is that you're not utilizing land resources.
Offshore wind projects have existed in Europe for decades. So could the two industries share the ocean off Nova Scotia?
As far as fisheries goes and those impacts, I think overall that the impact is fairly limited.
It's very busy, actually.
On the wharf, for Billy and others, their fear is anchored in their survival.
I think without a doubt it'll probably get bigger and bigger, and the fishermen will get less and less. It's goodbye fishermen, hello windmills.
You're not against green energy, though?
Absolutely not.
You just don't like it in the fishing grounds?
I actually have a car ordered with electric motors, so I'm definitely not against green energy.
What do you want?
Hey, if they're going to take my living from me, I want something, along with every other fisherman here.
Have they talked to you at all about compensation?
Absolutely not.
What do you think of that?
I think with the government, it's a curse word to them.
So for now, they fish. Exactly what's on the horizon, no one really knows.
How a remote village on a northern Gulf island sparked a musical in Finland. The story of Sointula is next.
Engel escapes pressure and connects with Webb, and they'll mark him just shy of the first down as he goes out of bounds. Mark Webb, the rookie from Ottawa, the first-year art student, on the connection from Derek Engel. 3rd and inches at the X-39-yard line.
And Mark, you talk about the last time UBC was in a Vanier Cup. Who'd they beat in the national semifinal?
Montreal. Who'd they beat in the semifinal?
St. FX.
Well, the planets are aligned, aren't they?
There we go. It looks like we're kind of reliving history again.
3rd and inches, handoff. Digby, he holds onto the football this time and crashes forward for a first down on that gain of 3 for Tolu Walope Ayadegbe. So Flannery Fleck with a low line drive punt that bounces into the end zone, and Batimbe will not get out, so a punt single from Flannery Fleck to make it 47-17. The final seconds of this football game. Flannery Fleck, what a story, as he was rejected by Queens, rejected by Carleton, made his way to UBC, and he's going to the Vanier Cup, was an all-star in the Can West this year, and has the confidence of this man, Blake Nill.
He's been such a huge difference maker for this team. There were times earlier on in the season when this UBC team was learning, finding their groove. You got a returning Garrett Rooker. You have Sam Davenport, who's new to the offense and just transferred from SFU. And in times where they couldn't finish drives but were in field goal range, they always turn to Kieran Flannery Fleck to put points on the board. He's been a huge piece of this team's success.
Fania airing it out down the field and off the hands of Ben Sangmua, and incomplete as the X-Men console themselves on the sideline. Liam Wilde, one of the 5th-year players who'll be leaving the game, wants some privacy on the X-bench in this emotional time for him. This will be the last play of the football game. Malcolm Bussey takes the football, rather Caleb Fogarty with the carry, and that will be the final play of the football game. Blake Nill leads his UBC Thunderbirds back to the Vanier Cup for the first time in 8 years, for the first time after they won it in his first year as head coach at UBC in 2015. Defeating the school that he started his coaching career with, the St. FS X-Men, and that man, Garrett Rooker, with a tremendous performance. 22 of 26 for 303 yards. Are you kidding me? 4 incompletions in the football game. He batted 100 in the second half and put away these pesky X-Men.
The second half of Garrett Rooker's game today was arguably his best second half of the season, probably his best second half of his career at UBC. 100%. When it comes to passing, not throwing any incompletions and putting more points on the board to ultimately put this game away and put it out of reach.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. On December 1st, join us for CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day for a special day of broadcast. The event is a yearly tradition for many, and we're bringing you a new edition of CBC's Food Bank Day that you can watch and stream live on CBC Gem and cbc.ca/BC. Make the season kind and donate at cbc.ca/foodbankday. The remarkable story of a charismatic leader bent on building a socialist utopia in a remote corner of BC is back on stage in Finland. Sointula is a Finnish-language musical about Sointula, the BC town. As Karen Larson explains, the play's producer is hoping to bring it to Vancouver next.
Sointula, the musical, is set to hit the stage in Finland this weekend amid great buzz. According to producer Mikka Karkkanen, the story is as much Canadian as it is Finnish.
This is part of your history too.
The play tells of cult leader Matti Kurika, esteemed Finnish journalist and philosopher. 125 years ago, Kurika came to BC to lead 200 Finnish immigrants in building a community on Malcolm Island. They called their Shangri-La Sointula, which means harmony in Finnish, organized around the values of shared labor, cooperation, and equality of the sexes. It did not go well. The socialist experiment dissolved in 1904, but Sointula, the town, remains to this day. Karkkanen says it's his dream to bring an English version of the play to BC so locals can appreciate the story as much as Finns do.
I would really much love to see this play in some theater, for example, in Vancouver.
Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC. I will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. We'll see you then.